News here on First Take. According to Shams, LeBron James is signing with the Philadelphia 76ers.
The Philadelphia 76ers could win the championship. I think this right here puts the Philadelphia 76ers right there with the New York Knicks as the favorites in the Eastern Conference.
Defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
Y'all, we're going to talk about LeBron James. LeBron James. Give me a W in the chat if you fell for my clickbait. LeBron, the GOAT, is back in the Eastern Conference, thinking that you were about to watch a 2-minute video glazing LeBron James. And then you just got a Kawhi Leonard intro, not unlike the one you just saw. There was a moment in Raptors land. There was a moment in Raptors history. I swear to God it happened, because I swear it just happened 2 weeks ago, where we thought this was going to be a championship year for the Toronto Raptors. And then the Kawhi investigation, the trade gets held up. Free agency happens. Giannis goes to Miami. Jaylen Brown gets traded. LeBron is in the East. And what was once a foregone conclusion is now once again a hypothetical. Now, I'm not going to clickbait you twice in one day. I'm not going to do that. I still very much believe in the Toronto Raptors. I still think that after the New York Knicks, I think the Raptors are the team to beat. But it doesn't matter if you're the second best team when the third, fourth, fifth, sixth best team is like this close. And I do think the margin has closed. I don't know exactly how good the East is going to be this year. I don't know who is necessarily going to be the best team to come out of the East. Need I remind you that prior to the New York Knicks winning the championship, they weren't even favored to come out of the East. The teams that were favored ahead of them were probably Cleveland and, definitely Boston. But then when Boston goes outside, Detroit is out, it becomes inevitable, and now everybody wants to pretend that the New York Knicks were the obvious title contender all along. They are getting older. They just lost Mitchell Robinson. I don't think they've necessarily replaced that depth. And so it's possible that the Raptors could be the best team in the Eastern Conference. They have a lot of continuity. They have a superstar probably coming into camp. So there's a chance. There's a chance. There's also a chance the Raptors could be a play-in team. It dances both ways. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to suspend my Raptor fandom, and I'm going to pretend just for a second that what the Philadelphia 76ers are doing right now is actually going to work. I'm also going to pretend that what the Miami Heat have done this offseason is going to work. And I want to lay out the case that the margins are razor thin in what is the strongest Eastern Conference that we have seen in the last 25 years. So let's start with the All-Stars, because there's a lot of All-Stars who will be on new teams. Some you might be thinking about a lot, some you're not thinking about at all. You're probably not thinking that Norman Powell is suddenly in Chicago and that Caleb Wilson's in Chicago and that Chicago is not going to be nearly as sorry as they were last year. You're probably not thinking that a former All-NBA player just got traded from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference to elevate what was last year one of the sorriest teams in the Eastern Conference, the Brooklyn Nets. And suddenly the Brooklyn Nets kind of look like a sneaky, they could win 22 games somehow if you squeeze your eyes. There's a couple of really big time All-Stars who are a little bit past their prime and feature a ton of injury issues, and that is Trae Young and Anthony Davis. They are now in Washington. These teams are not the teams you're thinking about. And that's interesting, right? You're not thinking about the Washingtons. You're also not thinking about a certain NBA champion that just went to Atlanta to replace what is arguably one of the worst NBA players in the league in Zach Ricochet last year. And you're probably not also thinking about a borderline All-NBA center in Ivica Zubac and an All-NBA player in Tyrese Halliburton coming back into the toe for the Indiana Pacers, who are looking to contend this year. That's the crazy part. See, they made this deal for Ivica Zubac to contend. When you look at the teams you're not thinking about, it kind of gives you a little bit of an appreciation for the teams you should be thinking about. And the teams you should be thinking about did get better. Almost all of them got better, with the exception of probably Boston. And even Boston, I can argue, didn't slip much. So let's start with Atlanta and Detroit. Two teams that are like the Toronto Raptors. They're built around players drafted in the 2021 draft. And let's also include Cleveland in that and Evan Mobley. These three teams are not the teams we're talking about right now. Now, the Pistons did lose Tobias Harris. They do have an ongoing saga, whatever the hell is happening with Jalen Duren. So there is some sense that they're not going to be a 60-win team this year. Maybe they take a step back. But a step back to what? Asar Thompson is still dominant. They have lost Isaiah Stewart. I'll give you that. But it's not like they didn't absolutely get a good stretch big in John Collins. There's still some belief that they are absolutely a playoff team. Until proven otherwise, Cade is still one of the best players in this conference. And I think that it would be crazy to assume that a team that won 60-plus games last year is suddenly going to fall off a cliff because Tobias Harris isn't on the team anymore. So I think, number one, we got to think about the Pistons. So let's add one team right there that's going to be in contention for those 6 spots. Number two, we got to talk about Atlanta, one of the best run teams. And, shout outs to Jay Gyro for saying Hornets still in trouble. Yeah, they lost LaMelo Ball, and maybe they get worse. But they also added a lot of really functional young pieces, and I think they're going to be, at the very least, entertaining to watch. But they probably take a step back. Let's talk about the second team, Orlando. So we talked about Detroit. Let's talk about Orlando, anchored by their best player, also from the 2021 draft, Franz Wagner. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs. This still presents, Desmond Bane, this still presents a core that can go out and win 45 to 50 games. And now they have a new coach. How much will that impact them? I don't know. But last year, Franz Wagner was not healthy, and that team struggled. But come playoff time, they looked a lot better. And I think they looked a lot better precisely because Franz was playing. And the minute Franz wasn't playing anymore, they didn't look so great anymore. Franz Wagner takes that team into a completely different stratosphere. And let's not even pretend that I wasn't up here last year saying that's probably the team that's going to come out of the Eastern Conference. Let's not forget that. Okay, so we got two teams. We got the Orlando Magic and we got the Detroit Pistons. Both teams that should be in the playoff picture. Notice, I did not include Washington. I did not include Charlotte. I did not include a lot of these teams. Let's talk about the third team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Gave the Raptors hell in a 7-game series, made it all the way to the conference finals, lost to the Knicks. That is not a team that has taken a significant step back. And you could definitely argue that there was a massive, massive addition to that team when Max Strus came back as a much better version of himself. I think they have a demon off the bench that they picked up in the draft this year in Malik Thomas. There's still some hope around Jalen Tyson progressing, Evan Mobley taking another step forward. I don't think it's necessarily logical to conclude that that team will be anything less than a 45-win team. They still have Jared Allen. They still have Evan Mobley. They still have you beat across certain positions. And if one of those positions is Donovan Mitchell, he wins the two-guard matchup against any player on the Raptors. So at the very least, you have James Harden, Donovan Mitchell. You have a very expensive, bloated roster that now does not feature LeBron James. So that's 3 teams. That's ridiculous. We're already in some very ridiculous territory because we haven't even talked about the heavy hitters yet. But those are 3 teams that are absolutely in that running. Cleveland, Atlanta. Sorry, we haven't talked about Cleveland, Detroit, Orlando. Okay, now let's talk about Atlanta. One of, in my opinion, the smartest front offices feature a dearth of perimeter creation and perimeter defenders across the board. I like their young bigs. I've loved their draft the last few years. I think they've done a very good job. Kingston Flemings is an awesome pickup for them. Exactly what that roster needed. And they picked up Henri Visar in the second round. I would have loved a taste of that. But honestly, Azanul, will he take a step forward? There's a little bit of an addition by subtraction. You take $12 million, $13 million of Zach Ricochet off the board. I would guarantee you he cost them wins last year. He didn't win them a jack shit. So let's add in Atlanta to this very, very, very crowded Eastern Conference. Go forward, Indiana. The last we saw a healthy Indiana Pacers team, they pushed the OKC Thunder, the unbeatable defense, to a 7-game series, which could have concluded in a Pacers championship had Tyrese Haliburton not gotten injured. Now, a lot of questions about what version of Tyrese Haliburton comes back. Sure. There's definitely some versions of okay, well, what if Pascal takes a regression step? But there's also a lot of optimism here. And Andrew Nembhard is a great young guard. Ivica Zubac is better than any center in the Eastern Conference, barring maybe 1 or 2. He's a really good player. And I don't think people fully register how good a player that guy is. It's yet to be seen if minus a stretch big, that whole thing works. But I suspect it will. I actually suspect that it will. And let's not even pretend that they don't have a lot of young, talented wings like Aaron Nesmith to plug in some gaps there. You could argue they're probably on the lower tier of this, which is scary because that means that if you do manage to somehow be a number 1 or number 2 seed, you could see that team in the first round of the playoffs. Shout outs to you. You've earned nothing. There's no advantage here. They're a great road team. They're excellently coached. Probably have the best coach in the Eastern Conference. I mean, maybe I'm, giving too much credit here to Rick Carlisle, but he's definitely up there. I've lost count. And we haven't even talked about the heavy hitters yet. So we talked about Detroit, right? We talked about Indiana. We talked about Orlando. We talked about Atlanta. Where the hell are we going here? Cleveland. We talked about Cleveland. That's 5. Right? Am I losing my mind here? I haven't slept in a while. Let me write this out. Cleveland, short-term memory, buffering. Orlando, Atlanta, Detroit, Indiana. That's 5. That's 5. Haven't talked about the Raptors, the Sixers, the Knicks, or the Celtics yet. That means 3 of those teams are play-in teams. This does not factor in any random growth, but this is an outlier. Like Boston could be something. Could be something. And we haven't talked about the Miami Heat. So let's talk about that next team, Miami. I think Miami is very much preying on a DeMar DeRozan commitment right now because they need it. They've lost Tyler Hero. They've gutted their roster. They've lost a lot of depth. They lost a lot of youth. Jaime Jaquez is gone. Tyler Hero is gone. I like Yakuchonis. He's gone. Okay. But you got Giannis Antetokounmpo paired with Bam Adebayo, probably the most formidable 4-5 in the league, especially in the Eastern Conference, but probably the league. I'm not sure who I'm not thinking about right now. Maybe Wemby plus anybody or Aaron Gordon plus Jokic, but honestly, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. The best 4-5 combo. And, they have plenty of perimeter defense. They probably do have the guy that most people think is the best coach in the Eastern Conference, and Eric Spoelstra, and he always finds a way to eke out wins. If they end up getting DeMar DeRozan, I think that's definitely a team that's worth contending with. So there's 6 teams right there. And now we can talk about the 4 teams that everybody seems to think are going to come out of the Eastern Conference. And let's start with the Boston Celtics. I think Paul George is a really good fit if he's healthy. And I have a feeling they're going to find a way to keep him healthy. I think he's going to find a lot of joy and a lot of freedom. I think he's going to have a resurgent season. I really don't think people appreciate how good Paul George still is, but he's still a pretty damn good player. He would still be a starter for you right now. He's a better player than RJ Barrett. I know people don't want to hear that right now, but he is. Like, he would start on a lot of teams, a lot of good teams. He's not what he was. No, he's not a top 3 MVP candidate like he was 7 years ago. But that doesn't mean that unlocked in a system that's just going to allow him to take a ton of threes and defend with space, that he can't be unlocked. Not to mention, we just talked about 4,700 players, right? Like Vision 4700. I think Paul George is absolutely a Vision 4700 player. Paul George covers immense ground defensively. He's a very, very systematically portable basketball player. He's very efficient still. And I think in the Celtics spacing, expect him to get more efficient. Not to mention they have a lot of depth. They have good guard play between Derek White. I would argue between Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, they have better guard play than the Toronto Raptors. They're a really good basketball team. They're still a really good basketball team. I think it would be pretty stupid to assume they'll win anything less than 48 wins. And with Jason Tatum back, he's better than Jaylen Brown. Post Achilles, provided he stays healthy, a lot of ifs. I think that's a really good basketball team. I think they should be in the running for home court. Let's go up one more level to the newly minted Philadelphia 76ers. I think we'll save the Sixers for last because there's obviously a lot to say about the Sixers given the LeBron James addition right now. But let's go up to the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors currently find themselves in Kawhi limbo. The league investigation apparently has concluded. Now they are just combing through what they found. I don't know if this is stalling. Honestly, at this point, I don't know because everything that is to be determined is not coming from the Clippers front office or the Raptors front office. I have no idea who to reach out to in terms of trying to get any clarification on this situation because nobody has clarification on the situation. If someone told you they have clarification on the situation, they're probably lying, or they work for the law firm, or they work for the NBA head office. Because other than that, I don't know who has the exact information. If the trade goes through, it's almost certainly going to go through, but let's just say 95% it's going to go through. So the trade goes through 95%. The Clippers get docked. Uncle Dennis gets docked. Kawhi gets 10-game suspension, a nominal slap on the wrist, just to show people like, hey, man, this is not allowed. 10 games without pay. Kawhi gets his comeuppance. That 10 games might be the difference between you being 4th seed and you being 9th seed. That's the gap. That's the gap right now. Prior to, all of this stuff, the shenanigans that's going on in the Eastern Conference, I would have told you, yeah, the Raptors can withstand a 10-game, 15-game suspension for Kawhi Leonard. But right now, with the Toronto Raptors not having their 2027 pick, this becomes a very dicey situation, man. It's a very dicey situation because you could be surrendering a lottery pick. There's no protections on that pick. This is why I say your championship odds are on life support because the margin is too thin to have an injury. See, again, you would love to say that you have an embarrassment of riches and you have 5 all-stars and you could just float, but you can't float. You've got 2 legitimate all-stars and that's it. You've got 2 legitimate all-stars and a whole bunch of hypotheticals, and that's the truth. You don't know how well Kawhi Leonard is going to integrate into this offense. You can assume it's going to be great, but maybe there's an adjustment period. What you can assume, ideally, is that Jakob Poeltl is not getting younger, that Emmanuel Quickley is not going to magically figure out how to run the point guard position, that Alan Graves is still a rookie, that Colin Murray-Boyles had a very promising end to last season, but he is still a second-year player with significant spacing limitations, although a great defender. You can also assume that Jamal Shed, who, by the way, last year among all players who took 500 field goal attempts, was the absolutely least efficient player in terms of true shooting percentage in the entire NBA. You can assume he's going to continue to be pretty inefficient because of his size limitations and shooting limitations. He's not going to magically morph into a 40% three-point shooter. You can probably assume some growth for Jacoby Walter, but you can also assume that, again, like your backup center spot is a little bit thin. And no, Kyle Anderson is not a backup center. You don't have one. So you're going to play someone out of position. And the East is pretty big right now. Mitchell Robinson is a huge human being. Giannis is a huge human being. You have like teams with piles of 7-footers, and you have one, and he's got back issues and he's overpaid. So look, the bearish case for the Raptors is clearly playing. Clearly. Like, you're lying to yourself if you don't see a window where you end up in the play-in. And when people think play-in, they think like, oh, Rob is saying the Raptors could have like 38 wins. No, you could end up with 43 wins and still be in the play-in. You could be 45 wins and still be in the play-in. It's just the 7th team. So you're very much in a situation where you could surrender the first overall pick in this draft. I'm not even kidding, because with the odds sliding the way they have, I think the Raptors, all this talk about like, if Kawhi gets suspended, will the Raptors recoup this pick, that pick, this pick, that pick? The one pick I want back right now, given how the Eastern Conference is that 2027 pick. Chidzo said CMB can defend any big. That is not true. And that is very ambitious. It is simply not true. At 6'6", he will struggle immensely guarding a Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay. Like, can he do better than most? Yes. But Ivica Zubac's going to have his way with him. In the post, what are we doing here? Like, you're assuming that a guy can scale up his role because he bullied Jared Allen for a series. That doesn't hold up. You don't know if he can hang with Anthony Davis. Like, I thought, like, don't accuse me of hating here. I thought Colin Murray-Boyles was the best Raptors rookie defender I've ever seen. All time, all history, 30 plus years. He's the best. As a rookie, he was the best. He's not the best defender on your team right now, number one. And number two, he's still 6'6", unless he has a growth spurt. At 6'6", he's almost always going to have a perceptive disadvantage when he's dealing with players who are 6'10", 6'11", and very talented. You think he can guard Joel Embiid? Like a healthy-ish Joel Embiid? You're on crack. He can't. And frankly, that's not a diss to him. Nobody can. Nobody is going to be able to guard Joel Embiid in this current spacing. That's what makes the Sixers' bet on offense kind of interesting. Move up beyond the Raptors' bearish case. I'll also give you the bullish case. If you stick around to the end of it, I will give you the bullish case for the Raptors. Obviously, I am, as I said before, this is not clickbait. I do believe the Raptors are very much still in the running to be the best team in the Eastern Conference, but a few things have to break your way. The New York Knicks. Losing Mitchell Robinson is a big deal. To me, that's a very big deal. I think he was a very underrated cog off the bench. Obviously, they end up getting back a lot of their championship teams. No team has repeated in the last 8 years. The last team to repeat was, basically since the Raptors won, no team has repeated. And it might be interesting because, if the Raptors win this year, they'll just bookend the entire era of parity in the NBA. However, it's worth noting that the Knicks are still the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. I think they showed something. They peaked in the playoffs. I think they showed a dominance over the Raptors that was hard to ignore last year, going 5-0 against the Raptors. They won everything last year. They won the in-season tournament. They won the NBA playoffs. They didn't leave it particularly close. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to add some doubt to what the Knicks were doing, but I cannot doubt. Looking back on this, what they did was downright dominant. And they should be a team that should flirt with 50 wins again. So we have a lot of teams here. Now let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, today on the panel, I presented that I think LeBron has made a mistake. I could be wrong because LeBron James is smarter than I am, but I think he's made a mistake. I'm going to tell you why I think he's made a mistake. Throughout my lifetime, there have been several teams that have tried to stack the deck by putting a whole bunch of really good offensive players together, and it just never works. Now, the take for and against is quite contradictory, and it kind of depends on how much you're willing to bet on things working out and how much you believe in Nick Nurse to tie it all together. The case for this is actually quite simple. It's an overwhelming amount of talent. Joel Embiid can shoot. It's a whole bunch of talent that can shoot. That's the kind of crazy part. See, in past years, when teams have tried to mishmash a whole bunch of really talented players, there were usually some spacing concerns over where players like to operate. You might have had a couple of too many mid-range scorers. You might have had a couple of guys who needed the paint to operate out of the post, and you ended up with a very clunky fit where 4 former franchise players just couldn't make it work. Examples that come to mind are Karl Malone, Gary Payton going to the Lakers, which did not work for them. Steve Nash and Dwight Howard going to the Lakers didn't work for them. Those are 2 examples. They're not the only examples, though. They're not the only examples. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden teamed up in their primes and built what a lot of people thought was a super team, and it didn't work. It didn't work in the playoffs because you need more than just talent to win in the NBA. And you definitely need a hell of a lot more than just talent to win a championship. If your goal is to actually win an NBA championship, you certainly need more than 5 guys who can put the ball in the hole. But it does help that those 5 guys can shoot, because Joel Embiid can shoot, and he's a pretty damn good shooter. And LeBron has turned himself into a very good shooter. And he's also the most natural playmaker out of any forward in NBA history. Easily. He's the best non-point guard playmaker in NBA history. And this roster is perfectly optimized to give him 12 assists, 10 assists, 14 assists a night if he wants it. He could play the Tyrese Halliburton role with this roster. He has athletes. He has 3 very dominant athletes. Imagine a lineup where LeBron runs the 4, okay? And at the 3-2-1, you have VJ, Maxey, and Jaylen Brown. That's 3 bullet trains and the best 6'8" and up decision maker not named Nikola Jokic in NBA history. That is a scary recipe for a transition offense from hell. Like it is hard to stop this type of offense, especially when you have a big like Joel Embiid who can space out to the perimeter and allow LeBron to sort of zone in the middle. Off the bench, you have more of the same. You have Dean Wade, who I think is a very productive role player, and they probably need a little bit more Dean Wade. And they also have Anthony Simons, who, granted, is probably the worst defender on the team and is a horrendous defender. But overall, I think you have enough here of creation at all times. Imagine the lineup combinations that you can run. Imagine the plays that you can run with high-low action with Joel Embiid and LeBron James. There's a vision of this that works super well, like ridiculously well. Kawhi to Toronto. Bron shot below 32% from 3 last season, and he's a good 3-point shooter. Let's be serious. If you're going to use a 1-year sample of LeBron being a bad shooter, I encourage you to go back and look at the previous year, and the previous year, and then combine those 3, and then tell me, what are we doing? What are we doing here? We're gonna hold a 1-season dip against LeBron. LeBron's a really decent shooter. And if he's not a decent shooter, then what is Scotty Barnes? What is Colin Murray-Boyles? What is Jakob Poeltl? What is RJ Barrett? He's perfectly fine. He's a perfectly fine shooter. Now the case against. And the case against is actually a lot more nuanced. Number one, there's 2 ends of the basketball court. Last I checked, nobody on that team can really guard their shadow. The best defender in that starting lineup is actually Jaylen Brown, and he's not a good defender, in my opinion. Hot take, I don't think Jaylen Brown is a top 50 defender in the NBA. He probably thinks he's a top 5 defender. I don't think he's a great defender. So that's just me. That's where I'm at. I think he's inconsistent. I think off the ball, he's a little bit lazy. I think he's very overhyped because he does a lot of that huff and puffing on-ball defense where he looks like he's trying to do shit. He is not a stopper defensively. Paul George is a better defender than Jaylen Brown at this stage of their careers, easily. Dean Wade is a better defender than Jaylen Brown. And I don't need to tell you how many players the Raptors have that are better defenders than Jaylen Brown. Kyle Anderson, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl. I go down the list. Alan Graves, Colin Murray Boyles. Like, there's a lot. Like, Alan Graves, that's presumptuous. That's a rookie. Probably not. But most of the players on that team cannot guard their shadow. Tyrese Maxey needs a lot of help. Joel Embiid needs a lot of help. So what are they probably going to do? Well, they're going to leverage the one thing they do have, which is size. And we all know that Nick Nurse is more than capable of making gimmicky defenders look like good defenders. We remember Gary Trent is an all-NBA level defender talks in Toronto. Now, granted, Nurse had better personnel defensively here. OG, Pascal, Scotty, Fred. These are naturally good defenders. I don't know if he's going to be able to coach a top 10 defense next year with the Sixers. In fact, I would almost bet my life that they're not going to be a top 12 defense next year. So what can the Sixers be? At their absolute apex, they'll be the number 2 offense or number 3 offense in the NBA and like the 15th or 16th ranked defense. To me, that's a team that gets bounced in the playoffs, not a team that contends for championships. I think, on the other hand, the Raptors can be a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense. Will their ceiling be as high offensively? No, it won't be. But their ceiling is so much higher defensively that I think you have a chance. But in the playoffs, talent tends to win out. So I want to ask, how does someone stop a Philadelphia 76ers team in the playoffs? Well, if you believe my bearish case, which hopefully you do, you won't have to stop them because they'll stop themselves. And this is where I say teams like this usually don't work. You know what you need for a team to work? You need guys who are willing to buy in and guys who are willing to buy out. You need guys who are willing to look at their job and say, my job is to allow this person to do their job. You need guys to set screens. You need guys who can offensive rebound. You need more Mitchell Robinson, right? You need Mitchell Robinsons. You need Peyton Pritchards. You need Derek Whites. You need Drew Holidays. You need those players to actually win a championship. Go look through every champion in NBA history and find one that resembles this team. There's none. Even those LeBron teams that won, they had tons of role players, guys who were willing to buy out, guys who had two-way ability. And by the way, at the point where LeBron was still a top 10 defender. So the roster that you need now around a LeBron James is ideally a very 3-and-D heavy roster. So if I was LeBron, which clearly I'm not, I would have picked one of Golden State. I probably would have picked one of Golden State, Indiana, or Minnesota. But I understand why he wouldn't pick Minnesota. Market, maybe cold, but I mean, you went to Philly. I can understand why he wouldn't pick Indiana, although I would have if I were him. Playing with Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam and Ivica Zubac, to me, feels like a much better bet than signing up for this circus. But the biggest reason that I don't think that the Philadelphia 76ers win a championship is Nick Nurse. Now, this might be a little bit of a personal thing, but the last time Nick Nurse coached the Toronto Raptors, I found myself consistently upset that the team chemistry was off, that the development sucked, that players were basically betting on themselves and not really committing to the team. I haven't really seen Nick Nurse have a tremendous amount of playoff success past 2020. And I find that his teams consistently underperform because their chemistry usually sucks. There's almost always like a dysfunctional nature to how they play. And there's almost an uninnovative nature to how they play. Tyrese Maxey is not a good isolation player. And yet time and time again, the ball was put in his hands to hunt on isolation possessions when Joel Embiid wasn't playing. This player freedom, player empowerment shit, it works if you have one star and like 14 committed role players. But when you have 4 or 5 egos this large, like VJ Edgecombe walked into the NBA thinking, I'm going to be a star. Tyrese Maxey walked into this offseason thinking, this is my team and I'm going to win a championship as the guy. Joel Embiid, probably 3 years ago, thought he was the best player in the NBA. He was campaigning for MVPs. I'm sure he thought he was the best player in the NBA. LeBron thinks he's the greatest player of all time and that he's done chasing the shadow of, number 23. And I'm glad He's done chasing the shadow of number 23 because he's never going to catch that shadow. He's never going to catch that shadow. You're on your fourth team, and you're not going to win another championship here. You're not catching that shadow. But that being said, do I trust Nick Nurse to tie together this many headstrong players? This is not OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Mitchell Robinson that you're dealing with here. This is LeBron freaking James. This is Jaylen Brown, and this is Joel Embiid. These are three players that have massive egos. These are massive egos. And even though LeBron is probably the smartest player, one of the smartest players in NBA history, and is more than capable of fitting out, how soon into a 2-3 game losing streak are we hearing rumblings of how LeBron is frustrated with Tyrese Maxey's defense, or LeBron is frustrated with Joel Embiid's durability or toughness? I mean, Jaylen Brown, in and of himself, all the rumors that we heard this offseason, granted, they're just rumors of him being not malcontent, but a little bit prickly in the Celtics locker room, rubbing people the wrong way. And I mean, you just have to listen to Jaylen Brown talk, and you can kind of get it pretty clean. Like, you get it. Like, it's pretty obvious that this is a guy who absolutely thinks he should be in charge. What did he say about last year's Celtics season? It was my favorite season. But why was his favorite season? Because he was the leader. So now, are you the leader of a locker room that includes franchise legend Joel Embiid, NBA legend LeBron James, and franchise player Tyrese Maxey? You're the fourth guy. Now, LeBron, he's also the fourth guy. Embiid is also the fourth guy. Maxey's also the fourth guy. How do you feel about this? If you're looking at age and seniority, Maxey's the fourth guy. If you're looking at actual relevance to market, Jaylen Brown is the fourth guy. If you're looking at actual production at this stage of their career, LeBron is the fourth guy. And if you're looking at overall impact on winning based on durability, Embiid is the fourth guy. This is a team that has four guys who are arguably top 30 players in the NBA on a good day. Any one of them can give you that level of production. But there is not a single player on this team that sniffs top 10. And that's where I come back to the Toronto Raptors. The bullish case for the Raptors is the Raptors have two players that I think are better than every player on the Sixers. This is a hot take for some people, because some people really, really swear that Jaylen Brown is better than Scotty Barnes. I don't think he is. I think Scotty's better than all four of these players, and I think Kawhi is way better than Scotty. So I think the Raptors have the fifth best player in the NBA and like the 9th or 10th best player in the NBA. That's what I think. I'm not talking talent. I'm talking good. I'm talking value. I'm talking everything. Defense, offense, durability, athleticism, versatility, portability, all of it. The same thing that leads me to OG Anunoby is a better basketball player than Zion Williamson. It's the same thing that makes me believe that Scotty Barnes is a better player than every player on the Sixers right now. So that's where I'm at. I think the Raptors have two of the top 5 players in the conference. And there's no other team that has two of the top 5 players in the conference. Giannis is the other best player in the conference. Cade, you could probably say Jalen Brunson. Are those the top 5 players in the conference for me? Who am I missing? Someone said put in the call-in link. Put the call-in link. I could put in a call-in link. We could have a conversation about this. Y'all want to have a conversation? We could have a conversation. I don't think people understand that LeBron isn't a fit next to JB and Joel Embiid. The fit is clunky. Tatum is right on that cusp. Yeah. I think Tatum, Scotty, Kawhi, JB, Cade, Giannis. That's the 6 best players in the conference. I would feel very weird putting Scotty over Jalen Brunson, given what Brunson just did. And I definitely don't feel comfortable putting him over Giannis. So if Scotty just misses the mark and he's the 6th, I mean, you could also throw Donovan Mitchell in there. There's a 7. My point is, I get to about 8 or 9 before I bring up the first Sixer. Okay? Am I crazy? Am I crazy, or am I so sane that I just blew your mind? No, I'm good. I'm good. I promise. I took my crazy pills today. I'm good. Someone says Scotty will take a superstar leap this year. Watch. I mean, for real, bro. He took the superstar leap last year. You just weren't paying attention. Did you not see the playoffs? Everyone's saying like, "Oh, Scotty Barnes outplayed every player in the Cleveland Cavaliers," but I'm supposed to be sitting here glazing what? Jalen Johnson, and Tyrese Maxey, low key, kind of in the same comparison bubble right now. So is Franz Wagner. So is Tyrese Halliburton. So is a healthy Anthony Davis. There's a lot of talent in the Eastern Conference. These teams are not just, going to roll over and die anymore. And that's what I'm saying here. Like, it's tough, right? Moral Brazos says Scotty top 10 if you're looking at the player as a whole. Top 10 in the league? Oh, Clippers Talk said, I'm calling in, baby. Okay, cool, man. Let's call in for sure. So that's just kind of where I'm at with this. I don't think LeBron's going to win a championship out of this. I think it's kind of a weird look. I also think it's kind of weird to string along, Cleveland for as long as you did, Golden State, your buddy Draymond Green, your hanger on, your biggest fan Draymond Green, only to kind of snub him. I don't really get it. But I think the writing was a little bit on the wall. Obviously, when you saw that Bob Myers of all people was on the show with Rich Paul doing the little whiteboard gimmick, I was like, okay. All right, we got Adam calling in from Clippers Talk. Y'all remember Clippers Talk? What's good, Adam?
What's up, Pen? How have you been?
It's been good, man. How are you?
Things are okay. Some things have been put on pause, but overall, things are going okay. Some things involving both of our teams.
Yeah. What do you think of this LeBron thing? Where would you have gone if you were him?
The more I think about it, I do agree with the move. Sometimes you got to go talent over fit. I thought he might go to Miami and they'd find some more shooting. I did not think he'd be going to Philly. But the more you look at it, well, he's got, young guys that can carry during the regular season.
Right.
In VJ, in Maxey, Jaylen Brown typically is healthy. Embiid is almost a bonus. I honestly think the way they have guys that can fast break out there, if you look at the top 10 guys in fast break points last season, they have 4 of them and the dudes I just mentioned. Embiid changes their style so much that if he's not there, it's not crippling to them. It gives them a different look, obviously, and against certain teams in a 7-game series, you're probably going to need him at some point to get out. But if they can make this work, and I hear what you're saying about Nick Nurse, it's kind of inconclusive to me with how good of a coach he is. Like, I still need to see more. They didn't, win the championship because of Nick Nurse so much as Kawhi said, I'm guarding Giannis, and Kawhi took over in Game 7 and had 40 points against Philadelphia. I don't know who Nick Nurse is as a coach and if he can get all this to work yet. But because LeBron can do what he did with the Lakers in the month of March, where he was playing third fiddle and they went 15-2, and he was being a great connector out there and doing all the little things and being role player LeBron, he can really pick and choose when he wants to try to really assert himself instead of having to run the show as much. And I think that is going to keep him closer to peak LeBron in more games, as close as he can be to that now at the age of 41 going on 42.
Yeah, he is very portable. He's insanely portable, right? He's one of those guys that fits into every single context, and now more so than ever because he doesn't need the ball so much to be effective. The defense, he kind of picks and chooses when he feels like playing defense. You know what I mean? But in the playoffs, he's easily still like a top 20, 25 player in the NBA in the playoffs. He just can't carry it out for a regular season. So I think if you're the Sixers, you're kind of banking on exactly what you're banking on, which is that the youth will carry you, the offense will carry you. How do you feel about their defense, though? Because Joel Embiid, one of the greatest defenders probably in NBA history, one of the top 45, 50 defenders in NBA history at his absolute peak, but he has been atrocious the last few years. Can't guard in space, Mobility is completely shot, moving around like he's 485 years old. Like, it's tough, man. And
Yeah.
that contract extension hasn't even kicked in yet. I think it kicks in this year.
No, obviously that's brutal. I don't expect him to play more than 50 games this season, really at best.
Mhm.
But you try to preserve him for a playoff series, do the best you can there, and let the other guys carry. I think a lot of it's going to be on VJ, Dean Wade, who's an underrated pickup for them, and
Totally.
Jalen Brown. And I know you were calling him an overrated defender. And I can see that over the last few years. The question is, with less on his plate, where he could also slide down into being a third best player some nights, can he give you more on the defensive end?
But is
Can
he willing
guys
to
give
do
a better
that?
effort?
Is he willing to do that? Because again, like again, I can talk about all the things that these guys could do, and on a 2K roster, I could win a championship with this team.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking for all 13 players, yeah, I can do that when there's no actual egos there. But at this stage, is LeBron willing to be a fourth option? Like, I know he's willing to do that for Luca, but is he willing to do that for Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brown? I don't know about that.
Well, it's easy to say he wouldn't sign up for this situation if he wasn't willing to, but the question is what happens when times get hard and they go on a losing streak? Do they
That's
splinter?
exactly it.
Do
That's
they have
exactly it.
issues then? Because then is that going to bring out the worst in LeBron, Jalen Brown, and the young guys are going to be looking for leadership and they're going, okay, we're rudderless right now. I
Mhm.
don't know. And then it goes back to Nick Nurse. Is he going to be able to rally the team and galvanize things? You know him better than I do.
No, not a chance. I would I would bet anything that they implode at the first sign of trouble because again, like it's just kind of LeBron is again, I've credited him for being one of the smartest players in NBA history many times, and I've done it multiple times on this show already. He is really, really intelligent, and we're not just talking like basketball court intelligent. We're talking like life intelligent, investments intelligent, reading people intelligent, s- scanning the room and figuring out who's who intelligence. And I think he's going to figure out very quickly who Nick Nurse is. And, I kind of reminds me of a lot of coaches that he just didn't get along with. That's kind of where I'm at with Nick Nurse. You know,
I
LeBron
could see a
has,
David Blatt situation. I could see it.
I mean, it's not nearly as dire as David Blatt because, like at least Nurse can say, like, listen, I have an NBA championship, but LeBron could easily like sun him. He could be like, yeah, well, I have four, like go fuck yourself. I don't know. Like, I think the Spurs model holds true. If your best player is willing to be coached hard, usually the troops fall in line. But your best player has to be obvious to everybody on opening night. And I'm not sure the best player on this team is obvious to anybody. Is it Maxey? Is it Embiid? Or is it Brown? I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure all three of them have a different answer. That's what I'm
Figuring out
sure of.
No, you're right. Figuring out that pecking order is going to be part of the adjustment period for this team. And if they
Right.
don't hit the ground running and just getting by off of talent, which they might just be
Right.
able to overwhelm you with talent, even though the chemistry isn't there, even though they're not fully connected yet, they're not running the offense like a well-oiled machine. They still might get by winning games while figuring it out. That's what they got to be hoping for because they are. I mean, VJ Edgecombe on a bad team's averaging 20 plus points per game if he's being featured more. Like
Well,
he looks that good already.
this is something that I brought up on the panel today. And I'm not saying this deal is on the table, but let's just say it was. Case and Wallace for VJ Edgecombe. You do it. If you're Philly right now, given what you need and exactly what you don't have on this roster, isn't Case and Wallace the ideal fifth starter on this team?
I think yes, his floor is higher. Edgecombe's ceiling is higher. He'd be the better fit for this current team right now. But I don't think they're going to make that move because they think they can make this work. But when you have Bob Myers in there now too, and they still have first round picks they can move. If they need
They
to
do.
make an adjustment, they can. And I think that's something else LeBron was looking at with this team.
Where would you have picked if you were him? You think Philly is the right decision? You said it's where it's growing on you, but like,
Yeah.
if you could have picked anywhere,
I might have taken Denver. It's weird. It's
interesting.
awkward for him to go to a place like that near the end of his career. But I didn't realize when he put out that statement earlier today, he's saying this is his last decision. This is his last stop. My thinking was he might have 2 years left. He could go to Denver and still finish off his career. in Cleveland to round things out. I think him and Jokic would be special on the court together. Now they got stuff to work out with Peyton Watson's contract and all that.
Right.
And people are after Cam Johnson, but I think that could be a really, really good team because I don't think Denver
It's another
is
horrible
that far
defense,
away.
though. It's another horrible defense. Like, to
Well,
me, I would have gone to a team that had a defensively slanted roster with offensive talent that pushes pace. Like, I understand the fit between him and Jokic, but once you start adding him, Jokic, Murray together, now we have like three kind of not so great defenders. Like, Jokic is valuable, but he's not in and of himself. Like, he requires a lot of insulation. Murray is downright horrible at this point of his career. He's just not a good defender at all. So they're already like roughly a top 20-ish defense without LeBron. So if you swap out a Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon lineups, like I'm not saying you would trade those guys, but less minutes for those guys who are all positive defenders, and then more minutes for LeBron, who is an overtly negative defender, where are you sliding? Like in a more competitive league where everybody's trying and you're not getting the stat pad on the weakest teams in the league, you could be looking at like the 25th ranked defense and the 3rd ranked offense. Like that's not a recipe for success, in my opinion. Like I've never seen a team win an NBA championship with that formula typically. And I think several general managers have referenced this stat: top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and ideally high top. So you can say top 10 offense, but you ideally want to be like the 4th, 3rd. That's just a shot.
Denver has had the worst defense of any of the championship winners over the last 20 years. I think they were 15th defensively in 2023. And ideally, you're around middle of the pack there, but your offense is so juiced up.
Yeah, you had KCP. Jokic had an unseasonably like positive defensive impact during that playoff run. And I would argue Jamal Murray wasn't nearly as bad as he is right now. MPJ was probably still okay. Aaron Gordon was still a lot better then than he is now. Bruce Brown was actually a really positive defender at the time. I don't know, man. Like I'm looking at it, I'm just saying, look, if I look at throughout NBA history, not a lot of not top 10 defenses winning championships. In fact, I bet you can't name 3 in the last 50 years. So it's just fair. Not a recipe for success. The Knicks were a decent defense last year, even though they featured 2 not so great defenders, because they overwhelmingly compensated for those not so great defenders by asking them to play a role. And I think the way Cat played defensively in the playoffs, that's what won him a championship. He doesn't play that defense, they don't win a championship. They don't probably go through 3 rounds. So that switch of like, okay, we got 3 really good defenders compensating for 2 so-so defenders who are kind of doing their job. And suddenly, oh, wait, no, Karl-Anthony Towns actually a best defender. He just decided to switch, you know? He's suddenly like amazing defensively. Like, what the fuck happened here? Like, did he take PEDs? Like, what did he take? And it's just like, okay, now we're a championship team. And that's the swing. So, yeah. But the difference in that is Cat was always capable. He'd always shown you like that he was capable of doing that. Joel Embiid,
he was good against Jokic in 2024 in the playoffs.
He was incredible against Jokic in the playoffs. Like, and again, like people said, like, oh, well, that's just because he can only guard the post. But it's like, okay, but if he's intelligent enough, playing next to an OG, a Josh Hart, like positive defenders is going to make your job a little bit more easy to predict. It's not like throwing him out on an island and saying like, okay, Karl-Anthony Towns, be the defensive stopper for 4 non-defenders. He would be destroyed. Like he would pick up 5 fouls in 5 minutes. But within a structure, he thrived. And I don't know if he can repeat that this year. This might have been a one-off for the Knicks. They could plummet. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they're 6th. I also wouldn't be shocked if they're 1st. But yeah, the East is stacked. This is the first time, I think, since 1996,
since Jordan's 2nd three-peat.
Yeah, that I can honestly say I think it's easier to be in the West.
The West may be a little bit more top heavy, but they don't have maybe
our 4th best team's better than the West's 4th best team. Our 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th best teams are better, I think. Like maybe I'm sleeping on someone.
I need to see Hallie healthy.
Yeah, but they got Zubac.
They do, but if they don't have that point guard to run the show, I mean, Halliburton
they got 3 point guards, bro.
Halliburton, I mean, the magical run they had in 2025, if he's
Right.
not like 85% of what he was, I don't know if that works. I'm not saying that would be bad, but I'm saying people think that they're going to be a top 4 team in the East just automatically. I don't know about that.
I don't think so. No, I think the top 4 teams. Okay, so let me get your rankings. Who are the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference for you?
Ooh.
We can go 1 to 6, and then we can start. We can talk play in.
I'll give it to the Knicks since they're the champs right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm going Philly.
KCP just went to Philly, apparently.
For real?
Apparently, I don't know. Someone's saying it. Must be
All
true.
right.
I read it on the internet. Must be true. Okay.
Bob Myers working. I might go Boston number 3. I still like Boston a
so
lot.
Philly was your number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you guys have Kawhi, you could be number 3. It's close. The distance between those two, you guys
Dude,
could be number 2. I don't
if
think
we
there's a ton of
don't have
distance.
Kawhi, we might be number 9. So yeah,
I didn't know it was that much of a swing for you.
it's a pretty big swing. Yeah.
All right.
Disgruntled Brandon Ingram and salty Grady Dick coming back. Team chemistry takes a 50% nosedive. You know, trying to figure out RJ Barrett's contract in the midst of all of this, and then yeah, like that's just concede the fucking season at that point. Like I'm pretty sure. Like this is the crazy thing about this, because like, okay, we can talk about the top 4, 5, 6 teams, but like 7 through 12 are still pretty damn good. Like you could lose to all of them, right?
Or
You could lose to the
good.
Nets, you could lose to the Magic, you could lose to the Hawks, you can lose to the Pacers, you can lose to any one of these teams, and they have no incentive to lose anymore.
Yeah.
So you're going to get the Nets' best shot. Is that okay? That's not scary to you. Yegor Diamond and Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle and Day'Ron Sharp. Maybe that's not scary. You get the baby Bulls best shot. Okay, they're running it down your throat. You got Matas Buzelis on one wing. You got Caleb Wilson on the other wing. You got, Norman Powell going off for 30 points. You got freaking Josh Giddey throwing alley-oops and shit like he's Magic Johnson. Okay, sleep for one quarter. They blow you up by 30 because they got so much offensive talent. And they're not a good team. Okay, but, they got Jalen Smith out there. They got Nick Claxton out. Like, they're fucking talented.
Hey,
no one's talking about the
Charlotte's
Bulls.
going to have some nights where they don't miss from 3, and they're going to surprise some teams.
That's
they have
another
a ton
team.
of 3-point shooting.
That is another team. Yes, Detroit is another team.
Detroit's being well overlooked this offseason now, especially after this move.
Yeah. So it's just like there's going to be a team out there that's going to be like, and because of the flattened lottery odds, I'm just like, dude, like I said this earlier before you got up here. At this point, if Kawhi is suspended, I want that 2027 swap back. I don't want to play around with this because there's a chance that 2027 pick turns into like a top 5 pick, because like if we're in the play-in, whoop-de-doo, like right. we got a 30-year-old center with back issues, and we got a $60 million player who's had a pretty checkered injury history in a stacked Eastern Conference. Yeah, you can lose a game, right? And it's just like the cost of losing that game is you get the 3rd pick in next year's draft and hand it over to the Clippers. Someone's getting fired.
Give me the percentage chance you think the trade falls apart. What percentage
5%.
would you put on that?
5%.
So you're very confident then that this is going to be figured out.
Yeah, because both sides are very motivated. And I mean, again, I said this before, like if there is a significant Kawhi part of this, like Kawhi suspended, I mean, obviously if his contract's voided, you can't trade it. So immediately deal falls apart because the league voids the contract. But I've been told by smart people that there is virtually zero chance that contract gets voided.
Is it because it's not even the same contract that he was on when the aspiration deal happened?
That's part of it. The other part of it is because the players union would throw an absolute fit, and because it's very difficult at this point to isolate him. So like everyone kind of has a very similar thinking on this, is like whether or not it's right to do it to Kawhi is not relevant. What is the point is retributive justice for the league and setting an example. And typically, if Kawhi was Jonte Porter, bro, If he was Benedict Mathurin, he'd be banned from the league for doing this. But he's Kawhi freaking Leonard. So he's not going to get banned. And the patsy in this is going to be Uncle Dennis. And it's going to be, his agency. And it's going to be aspiration.
What did Kawhi do, though? Tell me what Kawhi did.
Accepted funds into his bank account. That's it. Right?
But there's nothing illegal about a company that's completely dysfunctional paying somebody that isn't doing any marketing for them.
There's actually stuff in the CBA that says that if
can't be rationally explained, circumstantial evidence is enough. It doesn't have to be direct evidence. I understand that, but can I throw a theory at you that I've had about this? It could be as simple as, well, everybody wants the salacious, Steve Ballmer must be doing cap circumvention here. It doesn't make sense. Why is Kawhi getting money for doing nothing? So the group design comes out last week that we saw from Aspiration. And all I heard for so long from Pablo Torre was, if they had a commercial on the cutting room floor that never made air, that wouldn't prove it was not a no-show job. And now all of a sudden there's a group design that was out there. Why are they working on that if it was just cap circumvention? But let me take it a step further. Isn't it somewhat plausible that they were willing to take the fall with the Kawhi money? They were willing to eat that because through Kawhi, it just kept them closer to Steve Ballmer, who was putting in more money than they lost on trying to pay Kawhi. How is that not a reasonable theory?
I've thought about this many times. So I think about this from the perspective of you give a person, okay, so let's say I want to get closer to the owner of the Toronto Raptors, right? I'm working in basketball media. I want to be on his radar. So I hire his son. And when his son comes in to negotiate a contract, I make it known, wink, wink, I'm a really, really big Raptor fan, and your dad's awesome, the best owner in the NBA. And by the way, I'm going to pay you 500% above market rate. Wink, wink. Similar theory. You obviously want to keep your partnership with the Intuit Dome. You see keeping Kawhi happy. Sure. I mean, in theory, if the Raptors, I thought about this because I'm not a billionaire, but yeah.
People in the chat are killing me saying, come on, he was paid so much more than the other Drake and Leo. And it's like, well, yeah, Drake and Leo aren't connected to Steve Ballmer, the fifth richest person in the world. Like, if you have to eat money that Kawhi isn't doing anything for with your marketing team to stay close to Ballmer, who's putting more money in anyways than you're losing, isn't that a fair trade?
No, I hear what you're saying. I was even thinking about this from the Raptors side, right? Okay, so how many businesses around basketball would have prospered if Kawhi had come back in 2020? Quite a few, right? So when Kawhi wins a championship and we don't get to run it back, we have no foresight right now that the pandemic is going to happen, that financial calamities are going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in Wuhan, China. But at that moment, Kawhi represents so much money to MLSE and so much money to the Toronto economy and anyone who's connected to basketball. So you're telling me that there isn't a billionaire in Toronto who, out of just thinking, hey, man, I own 16 companies that will directly benefit from this, let me sign Kawhi Leonard. And then we go to Uncle Dennis and we say, listen, man, we really want to do business with Kawhi Leonard. He just brought Toronto their first championship in over a decade in pro sports. I'm not a big Toronto sports guy, but I'm assuming nobody else has won a championship since the Blue Jays in 93. So, I mean, I know the Raptors never won one, and I know that the Maple Leafs haven't won one in my lifetime. So it's the Blue Jays, right? So this is the first NBA championship that we have. This is the guy that is most directly responsible for that championship. He is in his prime. We want to keep him here. I'm a billionaire. Signing this guy to a $40 million deal is a haircut. It's not a big deal at all. $40 million is only a big deal when you're poor. or middle class or upper middle class or rich. When you're Steve Ballmer, $40 million is a rounding error. So, yeah, like when I look at this from that perspective, I'm just like, I'm surprised someone in Toronto didn't do this. To keep him, if I go to Uncle Dennis and I say, listen, I want to be in the Kawhi Leonard business, and they're like, well, we don't want to be in business. We don't want to do anything. But we are looking for money to stay in Toronto. You want to make it worth our while? Oh, yeah. I happen to own the company that has the naming rights to the Air Canada Center at the time, Scotiabank. Let's sign Kawhi up with Scotiabank. Let's have him not do a commercial. Let's just increase the value of the Scotiabank Arena sponsorship.
I mean,
if we're in the playoffs, that Scotiabank is going to be all over the place, right?
Well,
it does make sense.
My understanding there is if they're not connected to the team, I mean, he could sign any endorsement, any individual endorsement. Even Aspiration being connected to the Clippers because they had their own deal with them, which is why people think it's cap circumvention. Like Kawhi could still have his own individual deal, which is what may have been happening the entire time.
It's just difficult to see a failing company paying $40 million, especially when it's significantly above market rate, to a player and then not utilize that player in any way whatsoever. Kawhi doesn't have socials. It's a massively like
what if the company is running a Ponzi scheme and they're defrauding everyone? I think we're looking at it from like a rational aspect. Why would this company do that? Well, they're not a rational business.
No, they are a rational business. They're bad at business. They're unethical, but they are rational. What did they do that was irrational beyond Kawhi?
Ponzi scheme isn't the same as that. They weren't actually doing any of the carbon footprint stuff they were talking about. I mean, they were just getting more and more investors and paying the other investors from that money.
That sounds very rational. It's unethical as hell, but it is rational. Paying Kawhi Leonard $40 million to not work for them is irrational.
And
there's also no comparable behavior.
Unless it gets you closer to the fifth richest person in the world who's putting in more than $40 million to you, so it's actually a net gain. And they didn't pay him the full $40 million all the way. They didn't pay him that.
So basically, the only thing that they would need to show at this point is that there was never an explicit agreement between Steve Ballmer and Aspiration that they must pay Kawhi in order to add on or tack on to some money. Honestly, the thing about this that's so stupid is if I were Steve Ballmer, and again, I'm not, but if I were Steve Ballmer, there are easier ways to pay Kawhi $40 million. You could bury $40 million in his backyard in cash. You could pay him through crypto. You could do it so many different ways. Why would you do it legally? Why would you do it through proper channels? Again.
Well, and the other part of it is people think this is from him coming there in 2019. So you're telling me Kawhi had a deal with the Clippers in 2019 that then he gets the contract extension on the torn ACL in 2021, the full max.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2022, they needed to do this aspiration thing to pay him more because he came in 2019. Does that seem that logical that Kawhi and Uncle Dennis can be like, yeah, I know you got us in 3 years from now and on another contract. We'll just trust that money is going to come eventually. They already paid him the max on a torn ACL when he's not even playing the first year of it. It's just not adding up that much to me anymore. The more I think about it, it seems like an incompetent company. Kawhi didn't feel like doing anything, was dragging his feet with stuff, and they're about to go under, and they had bigger fish to fry. They had other things to worry about, and they just wanted to keep Kawhi around for Steve Ballmer because he was putting money into it. That doesn't equal cap circumvention.
If I want to get cozy with Rodgers, like, again, to use that previous example of hiring the Suns boss, but maybe expand it out. If there's a company that wants to do a favorable deal with Rodgers, Rodgers is the company that owns the Raptors, right? They own MLSE. Now they've bought out like about 100% of the shares. So it's a huge telecom company. They do internet, cable, they just generally, and then they own MLSE, which is, I want to say MLSE is worth around $20 billion. It's a massive portfolio, which includes properties, several teams, including the Maple Leafs and the Toronto Raptors. Huge. So let's say Rodgers is working on a partnership or a merger or acquisition. Would it be okay for the company that they're working on that partnership with to cozy up to Rodgers by giving Scotty Barnes $50 million to do nothing? I mean, you could argue, no, it wouldn't be a problem at all. You
It's
could.
possible, yeah.
You could argue that because
they'd have
they
to
could
find-
say it as like, look, this is what we're doing for you, wink, wink, and it's totally legal because you didn't ask us to do it, but we're doing it anyways, wink, 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 right? But the NBA can still step in and say this is wrong.
And look, the Clippers may get caught red-handed. I have no idea what's going to come out of this. I just think there are some other reasonable explanations that don't involve cap circumvention. And the Groot design thing last week, maybe I don't know, take another look at the situation.
I mean, if nothing else, it shows that the people who were working at Aspiration were actually on fentanyl. You saw the designs, right? Like,
I thought it was bath salts.
I mean, for sure, bro. Like, I don't know. I'm of the opinion right now that like like watching so many of these, corporate fraud type of things go down over the last, 30 years. It never floats all the way up to the top, dude. Like the idea that Balmer is going to be banned for a year, like people are really, really hoping that's going to happen. And I don't think it is. Like they would have to have irrefutable, they'd have to have an email from him with him standing holding the newspaper of the date while he sent the email. And he'd have to sign that email in blood for them to get him on enough to get him out of the league for a year. He's not going to stand for it. And they're not going to burn their relationship with the richest owner in the NBA. Money talks. Like people don't realize how much money talks, but like these owners, they do have a say. And whether the other 29 owners, and from what I understand, the other 29 owners like them.
Yeah.
It's not like people would. I was like, oh, surprise, surprise. People with money like people with even more money. I wonder how that fucking thing works. Of course, people with money like people with money, and they love the guy with the most money. So, I very much doubt that it'll be him. I'm pretty sure, there's already, if anything has been found, which again, hard to imagine at this point something conclusive has been found. But if something has been found, I wouldn't be surprised if they just went up to him and said, "Listen, like, we're probably gonna slap you on the wrist. You're gonna lose a draft pick, or we're gonna have to, make it so that." Because I mean, like when I listened to his interview, he threw Uncle Dennis under the bus. Anything that happened,
interview with Ramona.
yeah. He threw Uncle Dennis under the bus. It was basically like, well, look, we didn't have anything to do with it. We made the introduction and then we backed off. Okay. So we said the quiet part out loud, right? We made the introduction and then we backed off. So if Uncle Dennis negotiated a wink, wink deal and let Aspiration know that, hey, if you want to keep Kawhi in LA, which is to say, we're going to leave LA if you don't give us this money, right? Like imagine that negotiation. You are a new sponsor of the Intuit Dome. You're obviously invested heavily in the success of the Clippers. The Clippers' best player is potentially going to leave.
But he's not. He's on an ACL. He is on a torn ACL at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the only two teams with cap space, the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat, immediately spent it when free agency opened. I remember the report from Mark Stein. Those teams were interested in Kawhi. So you're saying they knew that that the Clippers had this deal going on? Like, really?
Well, in order for the Toronto Raptors to engage the Clippers in trade negotiations for Kawhi Leonard, it had to be conveyed to the Raptors that Kawhi was interested in leaving. The similar thing would have happened in free agency, where Uncle Dennis goes to the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat and says, hey, man, we actually aren't thrilled with what we have on the table here. We're playing in LA. We don't have quite the contention window that we thought we would. We would love to go to Dallas or Miami and, I don't know, not pay taxes. That would be great.
Well, Kawhi's on a torn ACL, not playing the next season.
There's no team in the league, given the player that he is, that wouldn't have signed up for that bet.
But you're
If they had the
saying
cap space, 100%.
the Clippers needed to pay him over the max extension they gave him on a torn ACL to keep him in LA.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you
But
are
does that sound reasonable? Is what I'm asking.
No, of course it's not reasonable, but I mean, it depends on what you think Kawhi's actually worth. I think Kawhi and players of his caliber are probably worth much more than the max.
Of course.
So, okay. So if you consider it like this, like again, you are invested in the Intuit Dome. Ballmer obviously is invested in the Clippers because he bought the Clippers, but he's also invested heavy money into the Intuit Dome to make it what it is. Aspiration is invested in the naming rights of Intuit Dome. This is not a simple one-way investment where Steve Ballmer's throwing money into Aspiration. Aspiration is also pushing value back into the Clippers, right? Have I misread that part?
They were supposed to have a $300 million jersey naming right deal over, I don't know if it was a decade or something.
Okay, but they fooled me, Jerry. They fooled me. Okay, cool. So Seinfeld reference. So yeah. So okay. So the point here is, over the long term, this was a business deal which is supposed to function two ways. And the better the Clippers do, the better Aspiration does. It's a joint. This is what a partnership is.
Except
I am invested in your success.
Was never a real company. There was a real company. Happening.
It was a real company.
It didn't have a real product. The carbon footprint stuff, it was a front.
Okay, you can say it operated as a Ponzi scheme. You can say that.
It did,
but it is a real company.
For 14 years.
It's a fraudulent company, but okay, so I've invested in companies that have gone belly up because they lied to their investors, fudged their numbers, etc. That doesn't mean they didn't have real business operations. They did have real business operations. They had a real building. They had a real board of directors. They had a real CEO. They just lied. They fucked the accounting up and they lied. It's happened to me multiple times. I've invested in companies, sometimes $20,000, $30,000 in companies, and I'm not kidding. The report comes out that an independent research or accounting firm has found that there has been discrepancies, and then the next thing you know, the stock's like going down 95%. It happened with Poseidon Concepts. Anyone can look it up. So
the difference is
that doesn't mean that's a fraud company. It means the company committed fraud. It doesn't mean they're not a real company. Aspiration was a real company. They were a real company.
Their intent.
They misrepresented their business, but they were a real company.
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of real company. Like, were they legitimately trying to provide the product that they claim they were, or were they using that as a front for a workaround to scam people for money, like FTX with Sam Bankman-Fried?
Is Coca-Cola a real company?
It's got a stock ticker I'm into.
Are you invested in Coca-Cola?
I have some somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Is McDonald's a real company?
Yes.
Okay. McDonald's allegedly
they have products.
McDonald's allegedly sells food. Okay. I don't think anyone who's been to McDonald's over the last 10 years could ever argue that what they actually sell is food.
But if you're saying we're going to plant all these trees and that is our product, and then you don't do any of it, not because you're just incompetent, because you were never planning on doing it, those are two different things. That's what I think Aspiration was up to, and that's why I think he went to jail for 15 years almost. It was a ruse.
Again, I think, this kind of reminds me.
It was Vandalay Industries.
No, it wasn't.
Seinfeld. Okay, it was a little bit further along than that. And you want to be my latex salesman? Oh,
man.
Maybe it was more like the Human Fund with George.
Okay, so they struggle with profitability and growth, right? They faced regulatory scrutiny and obviously customer complaints. Banking operations were disrupted. Company ultimately entered into a wind down restructuring process rather than continuing as a major player investors once suspected. But they were a legitimate company. They were a legitimate company. I've looked into this multiple times. They were not Vandalay Industries. Let's put it that way. They were not.
Regardless of the semantics, do you think Steve Ballmer was using this company to push money through to go back to Kawhi? That's the crux of the issue.
I think partnerships are blurry. They're very blurry. Okay. Because, like, okay, I am not Steve Ballmer. Obviously, I don't have $1 billion, but I do have a film festival. And our film festival has partnerships, sponsorships. Okay. So this is the smallest way that I can actually understand what a sponsorship agreement looks like. And in that sponsorship agreement, we have an obligation to our sponsors to boost their business. And they have a responsibility back to us to boost ours. Now, the exchange can be as simple as they give us $5,000, we give them a few ads. That could be the simplest, way to do it. Like, just like, if you have a YouTube sponsorship, if you're a YouTube sponsor, right? There's not, like, simply put, if you were a huge podcaster, let's just say you were on the Bill Simmons level of podcasting. If you or I were on the Bill Simmons level of like getting millions of views for our podcasts, and we did a deal with DraftKings, you don't think it's on DraftKings or in DraftKings' interest to also push people towards our podcast? They're already investing in us. The growth of the podcast is the growth of the business that is sponsoring it. So that's where I say the line is very blurry, because we did a partnership with a distillery, and if that distillery does like 10 bookings in the months after, then we can ask for more money next time, because that means the sponsorship was successful, right? So it's the same thing. Like, if Kawhi Leonard leaves, the sponsorship is immediately unsuccessful. So for a scam company that you think is operating as like, a Ponzi thing, I just think there's maybe an overstatement of the evil genius of it all. If that makes sense.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because these numbers feel huge when you don't factor in who the players are. In the grand context of the world, $40 million to do nothing is a mammoth contract. But relative to the actual investments and the players making those investments here, and especially when one of those players is Steve Ballmer, $40 million is very little money.
Especially when he's putting in more. So it's a net gain. It's still a net gain. That's the part that I keep going back to, because I think everybody keeps saying, why would they do this? First of all, they didn't pay him $40 million. That never happened. But Steve Ballmer's money did happen. So they made much more. It wasn't just 60 to 40 or anything like that. They made a lot more. They might have made double of whatever they paid Kawhi with the money that came from Steve Ballmer. That's good business.
Yeah. And
good fraud. Good frauding.
Yeah, I think people maybe, again, I'm thinking about this as a person who can reasonably figure out a way to do what they tried to do. There are easier and better ways to do what they tried to do. $40 million, as I mentioned before, there's like, if I made, let's just say that Steve Ballmer and, his co-owner was Mr. Wu? Dennis Wong, my bad. Dennis Wong and Steve Ballmer are sitting there like, hey man, we need to find a way to give Kawhi Leonard $40 extra million for some reason. The reason is irrelevant. The reason could be he's considering going to a tax haven like Texas or Florida, so we got to compensate. Or we have a pre-agreement from 2019 when he left $40 million on the table to come to LA in the first place, and we got to owe him because it's 3 years later, and that was the terms of our wink agreement. Okay, cool. Now let's make a list of how many different ways we can get him that $40 million.
This would not be very high on the list.
This would be about 150 spots down. I guarantee you, if you and I spent the next 45 minutes brainstorming ideas of ways to get Kawhi Leonard $40 million, this would be at least 150 spots down. Easily. Yeah.
I think that's strong logic. That was one of the first things that came to mind when this came about. Like, wouldn't they be much smarter than this about it? Like,
it's a little dumb.
The other thing I would say,
it's too stupid. Yeah.
Regarding the money that he lost out on, it's like, well, it was a 5-year deal versus a 4-year deal. he never lost out on that because he got the extension anyways. I was running the numbers with a buddy the other day, and he might have actually lost maybe 2 million or gained a little bit because he was not going to have a contract with Toronto that didn't have an opt out. So then he could get into 35% of the cap on the next max anyways. So the whole idea, well, they had to pay him because he took less money to go to the Clippers. It was one less year they could give him, but that year was made up for.
Frankie Cosmos saying, "Whoa, is that Adam Osland from Clippers Talk?" Yes, it is.
Me and Penn are boys now. You guys all know?
Yeah, there you go.
Anyways, I don't want to keep you. If you're doing
yeah. Like I think it's easier to do this with like 4, 5 different companies instead of just doing it all through one. Less of a smoking gun, less of a signal. As I
will
said,
say this, the last athletic report did say that they're investigating a different company that was endorsing Kawhi. Hence why this could be taking so long. But if that company's not connected to the Clippers, I don't think you have to get individual endorsement deals signed off by the NBA with. Like the Clippers would for an endorsement for the Intuit Dome with aspiration.
right.
But that's different.
No,
Individual
that's
players.
true. That's true. A player is free to negotiate with whoever the hell they want. Scotty Barnes has a sponsorship here with Skill Trade College. That is not an official NBA partner. That's just something that, you know, one of his agents found for him, and that's something. You know, I'm pretty sure the NBA has nothing to do with his Google Pixel partnership or his Subway partnership. Bowlway by Scotty. You know, it's effective, but yeah, like again, I say this, if I was a multi-billionaire in Toronto, I would have happily fronted $40 million for Kawhi to stay in a Raptors uniform. Multi-billionaire? Oh yeah, easily. Now I wouldn't have done it for free. Obviously, I would have had to have vested interest in the businesses that would be directly impacted by Kawhi's remaining in Toronto, i.e., I would have to have like hotels downtown, more tourism. Maybe I would need to own like 4 or 5 different condo buildings that are close to the, Scotiabank arena. Maybe I own a huge share in a company that invests directly in MLSE like Rogers. I don't know. Like I would have to find some way to make that money back somehow. But I'm saying like for aspiration, it's a very easy way to get the money back on the investment. So yeah. But at this point, I think the investment is taking so long. Investigation is taking so long because they're afraid that if they come out and they say nothing was found, that Pablo Torre drops another bomb, and then they're just left like with a matzo ball, right? Because it's just like, okay, like we're just gonna keep rolling out. So at this point, I have a feeling he has a lot more to do with this than people are willing to admit. Because they can't just make it away. He obviously has sources within the company. So unless, they're going to make Pablo Torre go away, pay him off or something, what can you really do?
I think they're worried about looking incompetent themselves if they come up with nothing here after Pablo had 11 episodes. They also could be worried about dotting their I's and crossing their T's because of legal recourse from Steve Ballmer. So it better be airtight if they're going to say we caught him with something here. But you can look at it 2 ways.
That's a huge part of this too.
Did it take this long because they found so much stuff and they're getting their ducks in order? Or is it taking this long because they're not finding the smoking gun? I don't know. I'm open to either. I just say full disclosure. I work for the Clippers on the radio side, but I'm rooting for the truth. If the Clippers were up to their wrongdoing, then they're going to have to get hammered.
I think I again, if we're looking at who's the easiest, somebody's going to take the fall for this, right? Someone obviously did something wrong because someone got paid $40 million and didn't do jack shit. So someone obviously did something wrong. The easiest guy to blame is the guy who's already in prison. That's what everyone chose to do initially, but clearly it's not enough. So the next easiest guy to blame is obviously Uncle Dennis and his representation. And why did they structure the deal this way? And were they asking for favors? And were they being pushy with the Clippers? And asking Mr. Wong to put $2 million back into aspiration because they hadn't been paid, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Like maybe that's the wrongdoing. Maybe that $2 million that Dennis Wong put into aspiration is literally the only thing that can tie it back to the Clippers. And what we think is the aha moment is literally the lone infraction. That it was
I
as
will
simple
admit,
as a very wealthy person being hit up by the agent of his company saying, hey, you introduced us to this company. This company has not paid what they said they were going to pay us. They call up the company and say, why have you not paid Kawhi? They're like, we don't have any money. Okay, well, we're going to put a $2 million investment in so you can pay our player because he's unhappy. I mean, it's obviously fraud. That will dock you something. You obviously, maybe Dennis Wong gets suspended for a year. I'm sure he's willing to take that fall if it means Ballmer and Lawrence Frank and Kawhi escape from this. But obviously, like you go up the mountain here. Uncle Dennis, Kawhi's representation. The next one is Kawhi. Kawhi takes a 10-game suspension. For what? Who knows? But wrongdoing was done. He was part of it, received money, 10-game suspension. Next up is obviously Lawrence Frank, the Clippers front office, anyone who is involved in this, Dennis Wong. And then the highest seat in all of this, the one who is mostly untouchable, is Steve Ballmer. I would bet dollars to donuts that he's not getting suspended. Not happening. Yeah.
we'll see what they come up with.
We will see for sure.
I appreciate you having me on. Sorry for
My
interrupting
pleasure.
the show. I
No,
wanted to
it's
get
cool.
your thoughts on aspiration and stuff. And
We
I was
haven't talked about this, and honestly, I've been kind of keeping hush about this because I don't really have any inside sources that are willing to tell me anything at this point about what's going on with this league investigation. Everyone I hit up every day, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm like, okay, like that's just where we're at right now. This is not something. This is not like some big secret out in the NBA that someone knows. Like people are really in the dark right now about like what's going to go on.
I'll say this on the NBA's part. As much as people are criticizing it for going on so long, it's like, well, do you want an independent investigation or not? If it's truly independent, you can't really put a timeline on it. You got to let them do their work. Because if it was up to the NBA, I'm sure it would have been done by now.
Yeah, I think people are going to be unhappy no matter what happens here. If they come out right now and say nothing was done, nothing wrong happened, they're going to say, oh, they rushed it, or they're lying, or it's corruption. If they come out and they throw the hammer and the gauntlet, people are going to be unhappy. It was like, why did it take so long? You know, there's no pleasing most people most of the time, right? So I think they just have to be really careful because obviously, as you mentioned, like the Steve Ballmer effect of it, like he has the money to go after them with like reckless abandon. He's not going to take any of this lying down, right? He is not. He is not just going to let his team get docked 5 first-round picks to keep up appearances. You're going to have to show letter of the law, code, like what the fuck did I do wrong? And so again, I find it very difficult to believe that the Clippers will be heavily penalized for this. Like I heard somebody say today they're going to lose their draft picks for the next decade. Good luck. It's never going to happen.
They had a handwritten note with the Joe Smith capture convention. If they had a handwritten note, I don't think it would have taken 11 months. I don't think there's anything that obvious, if anything at all.
Yeah,
We'll
if there was a handwritten note in this situation, it would have been burned by now. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, Adam,
all right,
always
man.
nice talking to you, man. Peace.
Be good, Pen.
See ya. Good to have Adam on. Definitely go check out Clippers Talk. Wait, what the hell am I doing here? I just removed myself from the screen. The overall premise of this show is that the Raptors, if they get Kawhi Leonard, have a chance to be pretty good. And the other point of this was the Raptors don't have as much cushion to mess around with suspensions to keep the league's appearances up. I understand very, very much that Kawhi Leonard could face a suspension. I find the possibility of Kawhi facing the suspension to be the third most likely outcome. The obvious outcome, the most likely outcome is very little, if anything, is done, and aspiration is just thrown further under the bus. Obviously, outcome number 2, the second most likely outcome is Dennis Robertson is banned from ever, representing an NBA player again. They throw everything onto him. Kawhi is aware that it's going to come down this way. The NBA just goes up to him and says, you or him, pick a side. Kawhi has already obviously found new representation. I don't think he's finding new representation if he doesn't already understand that his old representation is being implicated in the situation. It takes a lot to fire your family. But that third most likely outcome of Kawhi facing a suspension just feels untenable at this point for the Raptors. You need Kawhi to play because number one, as much as initially I brushed off the idea of like a 15-game suspension, I was like, we'll deal with it. It's no problem. You also need Kawhi to build chemistry with his team. You need him. And that's not to say he can't do that in play groups. That's not to say he can't do that in practices. That's not to say that he has to play those games. Maybe missing 15 games is not the end of the world and it'll keep him healthier longer. And we'll be saying this was a blessing in disguise come playoff time. But it's very important for him to come here, for the situation to be resolved, for the Raptors to build up chemistry, for them to have not a lot of distractions. Like you definitely don't want to do this deal and just have this investigation hold over your head because it's a distraction. Like you can see even last year the Clippers got off to this horrible start, and I predicted they get off to a horrible start because of this investigation. It's just championship teams are laser focused on their goal. Okay, you don't want Jacoby Walter and Jamal Shed having to teeter in and out of like wondering, being asked questions about Kawhi's investigation the entire year. You want this situation done with, and if it means he gets a slap on the wrist, 5, 6, 8 game suspension, I really don't care. As long as it doesn't go into 15. Once we start going past 10 and into 15, I think we get into a reckless zone where maybe the Raptors actually can't withstand that. And that brings me to my final point, which is the rest of your roster is going to have to be crucial at this point. Now, the free agency market has pretty much dried with the exception of DeMar DeRozan, who should announce his decision relatively soon. There were some rumors that DeMar DeRozan was waiting on LeBron. I wonder if he was also waiting on this Kawhi situation to resolve itself. Now, I don't think there's anything stopping the Raptors from signing DeMar, even if the Kawhi trade has not been completed. I don't think there's anything stopping them because they signed Kyle Anderson. But at this moment, they have 2 roster spots if the Kawhi deal goes through, and only 1 roster spot if it doesn't. So you'd be signing DeMar into a roster spot, and that's your final roster spot, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, I think that is true. Yes, this is it, because you've lost Mamu. You didn't bring back Mobo. That's 2 guys out, right? So 2 guys out, Kyle Anderson in, Allen Graves in. Who else did you lose? AJ Lawson? Was AJ Lawson a rostered player? And Garrett Temple. So you've lost just enough to make up for it. Yeah. But you also gave Elijah Martin that contract, which, again, is fine. So yes, I do believe that the Raptors, someone's saying Grady is gone. See, by the technical letter of the law, he's not gone. He's still technically a Toronto Raptor. Grady and Brandon Ingram are still technically on the Toronto Raptors. So I'm just wondering if there's some sort of legal thing that is stopping the Raptors from signing DeMar DeRozan. I don't think there is, though. I think you have the roster spot to sign DeMar right now. And that way, at least, he doesn't get impatient and sign with Miami, thus complicating your season. And I think that the two-way spots now matter a lot more to me, right? Because you don't know when you're going to have a day where Scotty and CMB and Jakob are out, or Allen Graves plus Kawhi plus RJ are out. We don't know. RJ missed over 30 games last year, quickly missed like 40 games last year. Jakob missed half the season last year. I mean, 2 of the guys who left, Brandon Ingram and Grady Dick, they were 2 of your most healthy players last year. Let's not forget. So my view on this is Nate Biddle, Nemari Burnett, and DeMar DeRozan. I would find a way to get these 3 guys on the team. I understand, Seth Lundy, definitely. He should be in the running. We haven't talked about it, but obviously Jamarian Sharp has gone to the Clippers in a twist of ironic fate. He has gone to the Clippers. He will not be a Raptor, and that's perfectly fine. I was not that interested in him anyway. I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't think he had a pathway to actually making this team. But I'm looking at guys like Christian Koloko. I'm looking at guys like Ulrich Shamshi. I'm looking at guys who are a little bit maybe past their prime right now, but maybe could add some depth if the DeMar DeRozan thing doesn't work out. It's just suddenly very relevant that you not be wasting 4 roster spots. And the Raptors, last year, Garrett Temple, wasted roster spot. Chucky Hepburn, wasted roster spot. Jonathan Mobo, basically a wasted roster spot, although I love Jonathan Mobo, and I feel the need to say that every single time I bring him up because I do love Jonathan Mobo. I still believe in him as a person and as a player, and I hope he ends up on his feet. But Last year, kind of a wasted roster spot. Trace Jackson Davis is basically a wasted roster spot if you're not going to play him. And, Grady Dick was basically a wasted roster spot. Elijah Martin, Chucky Hepburn. Like, we go down the list. There's like 6, 7 players on your team that just functionally cannot win minutes on a court. And the ones who can win minutes, like Jacoby Walter and Jameson Battle and Jamal Shed, are barely winning their minutes. So it's hard. It's hard. You need to have like productive NBA players. Malik Beasley level or above, right? Like that Tyler, I don't want to say Tyler Hero, but like Duncan Robinson. Like, this is the level we're talking about. Terrence Shannon, that level or above. How many of those players can you stack on a team? Because depth is going to get you through the regular season, and the regular season is what's going to keep you out of the play-in in the Eastern Conference. So the long and short of this is there are other teams in this conference that have more top-end talent than the Raptors. There are other teams in this conference that have more continuity than the Raptors. There are other teams that have a better player than the Raptors. Giannis, probably. But I don't think there is a better overall team than the Raptors. There's a team with a better coach. The Miami Heat have a better coach. There's a team with a better top shelf, absolute apex talent. That is Giannis Antetokounmpo. There is a team with more continuity and proven track record, which is the New York Knicks. There is a team with more shooting, which is most teams, honestly. But, there's a team with a better center, a better point guard, a better small forward. Well, I don't know. This is no team with a better small forward. There are teams with better guard depth. There are teams with more veteran presence. There are teams with more playoff experience. There's a lot of teams. But the Raptors, there are teams with more youth upside. Like, overall collection of very good young players who could pop off. There's better teams, I think. But the Raptors have a nice little simmering combination of all of them. Does that make sense? They've got a lot of upside with Scotty, Jacoby, Jamal, Jameson, Allen Graves, etc., CMB. They've got proven track record playoff performers, like guys who actually show up in the playoffs. Colin Murray-Boyles, limited samples. Scotty Barnes, Kawhi Leonard, RJ Barrett. You've got real proven guys. You've got scoring. You've got size. You've got defensive versatility. You've got some solid shooters. I would argue you probably need more, but you've got some solid shooters on this team. Kawhi Leonard, obviously a great shooter. Emmanuel Quickley, great shooter. That's already more spacing than you had last year. Allen Graves factors to be a pretty good shooter. Jacoby Walter is a sniper, and he's going to play more minutes this year. So, Jameson Battle, that's 5. That's 5. So you lose Sandro Mamukelashvili, who's one of your better shooters, but you replace it in the aggregate to some extent, and you get a way better player. So I just think the Raptors are uniquely positioned in that among all the teams, apart from the Knicks and maybe the Celtics, they're the team with the least flaws, the least discernible, clear weaknesses. What is the Raptors' absolute weakness? And try to say, let me know in the comments, what is the Raptors' biggest weakness right now? And don't say center depth, because I know that. Go beyond center depth. What is the Raptors' biggest weakness? Shooting, center depth. Probably. That's probably it. No true point guard, no good starting center. Kawhi Leonard is one of the best pick and roll ball handlers in the NBA. Scotty Barnes is blossoming as one of the best wing creators out of the pick and roll and in general, handling isolation possessions. I don't think you need a point guard in the traditional sense when you have Kawhi Leonard and Scotty Barnes. I think you need more of an off guard. I think you need more of a Fred VanVleet type of situation here where, yeah, you don't need John Stockton when you have Scotty Barnes and Kawhi Leonard. You give these guys the ball at the top of the key. You allow them to isolate. You allow them to cook. You allow them to find advantages. You allow them to probe. You allow them to go into the mid-range. And when one has the ball and the other doesn't, the other one is cutting off the ball or standing in the corner. It's really not that complicated. And honestly, I think you have an abundance of creation in the aggregate. Right? So it's just about aggregation. Shot creation. This I definitely do not agree with. Shot creation off the bench, I agree with. But shot creation in general, Kawhi is an excellent shot creator. Scotty is blossoming. RJ is blossoming. But yeah, beyond that, Yeah. Kawhi to Toronto. Tatum is a Dollarama version of Kawhi. I think that's a little bit disingenuous. Jason Tatum's a hell of a basketball player. I expect him to be one of the top 7, 8 players in the conference. Certainly don't think that's a Dollarama Kawhi. But yeah, there hasn't been a day in Jason Tatum's life where he's been a better basketball player than Kawhi Leonard, and I don't expect that day to come anytime soon. And post Achilles, we'll see. There's 4 All-Stars that we're factoring to be pretty good are coming off of major injuries. Tatum, Halliburton, Trae Young, Anthony Davis. Sure, it's, the summer, so everyone's just like, oh, these guys are going to be perfect. These guys are going to be perfect. You don't know they're going to be perfect. We don't know if they're going to be perfect. They could be perfect. They could be fine. The Wizards could surprise some people. They could win 35 games. I think what I'm saying is, look, does the best team in the conference go 82-0 just because they're the best team in the conference? No, that never happens. So let's look at teams that have actually won 60 plus games, 65 plus games. What is usually true for those teams? A team that wins 65 plus games, which again, exceedingly rare. This is very rare teams. I think there's a few Spurs teams that won 67 games. Obviously the OKC Thunder, they won they won close to 67, 66-ish. Last year, the Pistons top 60, which was, again, largely predatory on the lower end of the Eastern Conference. 96 Bulls, the Warriors, right? Was it the 16 Warriors, 15 Warriors, 15, 16 Warriors? So I look at those teams and what is true for those teams. Number 1, an abundance of depth. Number 2, usually quite a bit of continuity. Number 3, usually a lot of weakness at the bottom of the conference. And number 4, I didn't call you delusional. I said I disagree with Kawhi being way better than Tatum. Tatum is slightly better. What? How? How is Jason Tatum better than Kawhi Leonard? Sorry, I'm shocked, Nolan. Wow. I mean, you might just be very high on Jason Tatum, and obviously, like, you're entitled to your opinion. I simply disagree. No. No, dude. Kawhi to Toronto said Tatum is closer to Scotty than he is to Kawhi. Yeah. Yeah, he is. He is. Tatum is only better at playmaking. Kawhi is so underrated, dude. It's okay to disagree. It's just how I see it. Yes, it is. It is perfectly okay to disagree. Sorry, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that Jason Tatum is better than Kawhi Leonard. This might be the first time I'm legitimately seeing this. I mean, I'm sure I've seen it from like Chill on Player's Choice. I just don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think I've ever seen this like presented as like a non-biased opinion. Like this is just like kind of flippantly thrown out. Like that's just a fact. Like we're all just supposed to be like, yeah, of course, Jason Tatum is better. Jason Tatum coming off a Achilles tear is number one. He's nowhere near the shooter that Kevin Durant was. So, and he's not as big as Kevin Durant was, and he wasn't as good as Kevin Durant is. So, like, you know, there's considerable mobility issues here. Also, like, yeah, I can't see it, man. The first thing to go after an Achilles tear is defense, right? Tatum is 28, Leonard's 35. Age is his only advantage. Can I give you guys a number to think about? Kawhi Leonard, hang on, I want to make sure that I get this accurate. So a lot of people are very quick to say that LeBron is the GOAT because of longevity and whatever. And obviously longevity has never been an argument that I would use for Kawhi Leonard's greatness. But do you know that Kawhi's record in the NBA Finals is 11-7 across three appearances in the NBA Finals? Do you know that he has shot 62.1% true shooting in all career playoff games? All. Spurs, Raptors, Clippers. All three. LeBron is 22-33 in the finals and has shot 58% on his career. And don't even make me start on what Jason Tatum's career percentages are, because they're not 62%. So, like, at some point, bro, like, can we just stop? Can we stop? Like, can we stop? Can we fucking stop? Can we stop pretending that Kawhi Leonard is not that dude? Because he is absolutely that dude. Now, look, fair warning here. You're probably not going to find a bigger Michael Jordan fan than me. Okay. This guy is like, I had his poster on my wall. I had his jersey. I thought, that he could do no wrong. He was my favorite player, period. He's an untouchable level of basketball greatness to me. I do not compare people to Michael Jordan lightly. I frown inside, and a little part of me dies every single time someone tries to compare LeBron James to Michael Jordan. In fact, I get mad when people compare Kobe to Michael Jordan, because it's not that close. And in fact, if I evaluate my own behavior, people being compared to Michael Jordan usually makes me a bit of a hater of that player. I'm sure you feel that same way about your favorite team, right? Let me correct my statement. Kawhi is a better player all time, obviously, and the gap isn't big between. I just think Tatum is better. I didn't realize that was a hot take. Yeah, it is a hot take, because Kawhi Leonard was arguably a top 5 player in the NBA last year and was legitimately in MVP conversations, and is coming off like the most efficient season of his career at the age of 34. Okay, so the point here is, I typically do not take kindly to people being compared to Michael Jordan, because I think it is basically an untouchable level of greatness. What made Michael Jordan so great? It's the efficiency. It's the surgical nature in which it's the versatility, it's the scoring versatility, it's the dominance, it's the post play, it's the shooting, it's the mid-range stuff, it's the handle, it's the compact nature of his game. It is the pressure that he puts on your team's defense and the relentless ability to show up in hard moments that make other people crumble. Okay? That to me is greatness. When I say that Leo Messi is the greatest soccer player I've ever seen in my life, that is not disrespect to Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Zidane, the other Ronaldo, so CR7, R9, all those guys. It's not disrespect to Pele and players that I frankly did not get to see in my life. It is simply my observation that when the gap is absolutely untouchable, that when the measurements are incremental, when the pressure is highest, that Leo Messi finds a way somehow. Some people hate it, some people love it, but the point is, the guy is a fucking magician in those moments. And Kawhi, to me, is a magician in those moments. He is a magician in those tough moments. And again, I say this, I resent any comparisons to Michael Jordan, because there's only one Michael Jordan. The closest thing and the only player I've ever felt, oh shit, that's Michael Jordan, is Kawhi Leonard. As the only player in 2019 in the playoffs, 2017, 2016 in the playoffs with the Spurs before he got hurt, Zaza stepping on his under him. To me, I felt like I was watching Michael Jordan again. It doesn't look the same. It wasn't as flashy. It wasn't as charismatic. The smile wasn't as big. The highlights weren't as fine. Functionally, what Michael Jordan was on the court, that's what Kawhi Leonard was to me. Okay? So, yeah. Jason Tatum has never touched that level. Jason Tatum has never been a top 5 player in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard, for the last 10 years, has never not been a top 6 player in the NBA. So we're talking about a player who from 2016, 2016 to 2026 is a 10-year run where Kawhi Leonard has never not been a top 5 player in the league, in my opinion. Now, he may have had seasons where he was off. He may have had seasons where, maybe he was injured or whatever. And in that season, you wave him off. There's never been a moment in the last 10 years where you can tell me definitively, oh, there's five players better than Kawhi Leonard on the planet. That's not happening. That's never happened. No. So will that year happen this year? Possibly. Maybe Kawhi steps off the top 5 throne and is the 7th best player in the league. But over anything we've seen in the last 10 years, Jason Tatum has never touched that level. So again, I'm talking about a guy who's never not been a top 5 player versus a guy who's never been a top 5 player. The gap is pretty big. I'm not a biased Raptor fan, and I'm hoping to get an apology when Tatum is hooping. What part of what I've said makes you think that I'm not a Jason Tatum fan? I've clearly said that Jason Tatum is an awesome basketball player. I was the one on the panel saying he's going to make a perfectly fine recovery. He's going to be fine. He's going to come back. Like, there's no apology needed here. You are saying that he's better than Kawhi Leonard. You don't get an apology if Jason Tatum is hooping. You get an apology when Jason Tatum is a better player than Kawhi Leonard. And again, that may happen this year, but I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. Coming off an Achilles as a not so great shooter is not the easiest thing. Now, Tatum is younger. Tatum is definitely closer to what people consider traditional peak. So I'm not even saying it's a big gap at this point. Maybe it's not that big a gap. If he's perfectly healthy and Kawhi struggles, maybe it's not that big a gap. But nothing I've seen in the last 7 years would make me think that this is close. Like, stretches, gaps. To put it in perspective, for the last 5 years, there's been an ongoing debate among Celtics fans, again, stupid Celtics fans, whether Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown is their best player. There has never been a debate for any second of any minute other than Jaylen Brown's own family or inner circle where we're debating, is Jaylen Brown a better player than Kawhi Leonard? Sorry. Here's a hot take. I think Kawhi Leonard is a better basketball player right now than Giannis Antetokounmpo. Here's another hot take. I think if Kawhi replicates what he did last year, he's the best player in the Eastern Conference. That's a hot take for you? Sure. But dude, the second three-peat of Michael Jordan's career, he was right around this age. Giannis has played more minutes than Kawhi. Kawhi has a chance to really shut some people up this year. And I hope he does. I hope he does it as a Raptor. I hope this trade goes through. I genuinely, I cannot even imagine what's going to happen to the Raptor season if this trade doesn't get pushed through. And also, if he gets suspended, I want that 2027 pick removed from the trade, period. You can have 2031, you can have 2033, but if he gets suspended, I have no near-term guarantees on the protection of that pick. And with the current lottery odds, sorry, I'm not giving up a top 3 pick to make the play-in this year. That's tough. Drew Nosball said, love Kawhi. Yeah, we all love Kawhi. I hope I'm wrong about Kawhi and Tatum. I'd love the Raptors to win this title this year and prove me wrong. Prove you wrong? Are you suggesting that they can't win a title? I mean, maybe the next time, maybe when this video goes live, what you can do is when this video goes up, why don't you do this? Write out what you think, Nolan, specifically, this is for you. Write out what you think is going to be the Eastern Conference standings or the power rankings based on how you think teams will finish. And we'll just see where you have the Raptors and we'll pin it. I'll pin it for you and you can revisit it and people can come back and tell you that you were right, where maybe you have the Raptors at 5 and they struggle and you're right. Or maybe you have the Raptors at 5 and the Raptors are at 1 in January and people can tell you that you were wrong. That sounds fun. Let's do that. I'll talk to y'all later. Please like this video. Please subscribe to PENSARE Basketball. Someone said I already posted it on X. Yeah, but is it really official if it's not in our comment section? I'm just kidding. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace and enjoy your night. I have not been sleeping a lot lately. I've been burning the candle on both ends to give you a bit of a life update at this point. I'm getting heavily back into investing. I think people who follow me on X and Instagram probably already know that. I am slowly getting back into investing. and just trying to get my bearings about me, right? I'm also going to be renovating my house over the next week and a half. So I'm not saying I'm gonna be slowing down on content necessarily, but in terms of like why has there not been alive for like 3-4 days, bro? Like we're trying to reorient our entire lives. I am a big believer, and I've been a big believer for a very long time, that when your mindset changes, when your ideas change, when your perspective changes, then everything else aligns. It's a frequency thing for sure, but it's a lot of things, right? And I don't think you can outrun frequency. If you got a negative frequency, all your situations are going to be panicky and negative, right? So environment and frequency are the name of the game right now. And for me right now, renovating the house, making sure like my office is right, then finding I pushed a lot of money into the stock market this past like couple of weeks, bro, like recklessly. Someone said, "What are stocks you are buying?" Um Okay, please do not consider this any financial advice. This is not financial advice. If you are new to investing, do not take anything that I'm about to say here with any grain of salt. Okay. But that being said, I was looking at ServiceNow, Netflix, Meta, Amazon, Google on the fall. Recently, I was looking at Liberty Energy, which just declined about 35% over the last couple of weeks. Sorry, couple of days. What am I saying? Couple of days. Dollarama. Dollarama has been a long hold for me. Hold on. I'll actually tell you what stocks I was looking at. So, Boeing Company, Dollarama, Netflix, Meta, Amazon, Google, Nvidia, ServiceNow, Walmart, Vertiv Holdings, Taiwan Semiconductor, KLA Corporation, Lam Research, Apple, Liberty Energy Group, GE Aerospace, Disney, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, and Berkshire Hathaway. So those are. Someone said, "What happened to your face? Why are there marks under your eyes?" So I'm going through something called it's called like melanoma, or like where sun damage and excessive rubbing, maybe stress, maybe dietary something, can result into excess melanin production in certain parts of your faces. I like to explain it to people as if like it is the opposite of what Michael Jackson had, where he had what do they call it? Fuck, man, how do I always forget what that's called? Vitiligo, right? So it's vitiligo, where for a black person, you have patches of your face that have no melanin production, so you end up with white patches on your face. Well, sometimes white people end up with dark patches on their face, and that is what I'm going through right now. It should clear up in a couple of weeks. I am undergoing a little bit of treatment for it, but yeah. Someone said, "Oh my God, you have vitiligo like Uncle Ruckus." Does Uncle Ruckus have vitiligo? What is vitiligo? Anyways, I've been going through this on and off for like a few months now, almost a year. If you noticed, I was wearing a hat for a long time. You've never seen the Boondocks? Nope. Thank you for your stock recommendations. They were not stock recommendations. So we are clear. I had a very, very bad experience with somebody taking stock advice who was a friend of mine and not knowing what to do, and losing a ton of money like 15 years ago. And I always felt so guilty. So this was not stock advice, but these are definitely companies that I was looking into over the last week and doing research reports on and utilizing my formal education. And yeah. Someone said, "Okay, hope you get better." Yeah, like for a while I was thinking it might be because I don't have enough iodine in my diet because I cut out iodized salt. Then I thought maybe it's because I had a sunburn on my face that just did not go over well. Then there was also a period where I went I started doing MMA, and there was a period where my face was really, really bruised up, and then I ended up falling asleep, and then I woke up with the sun shining on my face. So there were like cuts on my face or whatever that maybe the sun hit very vulnerable skin, and I don't wear sunblock. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons for this, but yeah, I don't know. We need to trade RJ for a 7 foot, 240 plus defensive center. RJ is probably not going to net you a 7 foot plus 240 pound defender at the center, especially if that player can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. I very much doubt it. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great night. Peace.